It's time for Money for Lunch, where we feed your brain and your business with supersized portions of business and financial news. Now your host, Bert Martinez.
Hey guys, we are back. My next guest, Geremy Heath. Excited to have Geremy back. Him and his wife were with us, I don't know, it might have been about a month ago or so, when they were talking about real estate. And so just to give you a little bit of background on these two guys, these guys are experts in the residential remodeling. Geremy and Melanie Heath are coming on, or at least Jeremy's going to come on to discuss how you can maximize your remodeling dollars so your house will sell fast. The Heaths are the power duo behind Texas All-Cash Home Buyers, a residential redevelopment firm that offers no obligation, all-cash payouts for homes in the San Antonio area. Since launching their business in 2008, Geremy and his wife Melanie have purchased over 100 properties, and on average, they oversee the redevelopment of 3 to 5 new real estate projects per month. Geremy Heath, welcome back to Money for Lunch.
Hey, Bert, thanks for having us.
You bet. So Melanie was busy, couldn't make it?
Yeah, she's someone's got to keep the wheels running on the business.
Yeah, I love it, man. God bless our women folk, because they really do help us out in so many ways. All right, let's talk about this. Jimmy, when selling a house, how do I know if I'm better off repairing the house or selling it in what is called as-is condition? What's your thinking on this?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it applies to not only people that sort of live in a house that they're looking to sell, but a lot of the time people may come across a house through some other means. Maybe it's an inherited house or something along those lines. And I guess at the highest level, the big question is, what sort of return on investment is the person going to get if they decide to put some money into the house, and how much more money are they going to realize as a result? Because obviously people don't like doing things for nothing. So really there needs to be that return on investment that makes it attractive to somebody to really spend the time and the money to move forward with any type of renovations on their home.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, because my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, this is your area, there are some areas of the house that are worth remodeling. I've heard that sometimes you get more money if you invest in a kitchen or in bathroom versus other parts of the house. Is this true?
Yeah, I think that there are certainly areas where you would get more bang for your buck. But I think the first thing that people, and a lot of people who are not in real estate as a profession probably don't realize this, but if you're looking to sell your house on the retail market to an end buyer who's bank qualified, the banks have requirements on the condition of the home in order for them to lend. So, for example, like the foundation is a big one. If there's any sort of foundation issues, you could have the most beautiful kitchen or bathroom, but the bank's just not going to lend on it because of the foundation issues. So the first question for anyone looking to do this is, do I understand what the lender requirements are going to be, and does my house satisfy those? Because if they don't, you're not going to be able to get somebody to get a loan on it.
Gotcha. Yeah, you know what, and it's interesting because, okay, so what you're saying is that if you're going to use some kind of, VA or FHA or some kind of banking, if the buyer is using one of these more or less traditional types of funding situations, then the home has to meet certain expectations. For example, it has to have, let's say, some kind of flooring. Versus if you're talking to somebody like yourself, where you guys may purchase a house with no flooring because you can pay cash for it, and then you can add some flooring and then flip it. Am I thinking correctly on this?
Yeah, that's a good example. Or another good example, because I know foundation, which I use, is sort of an obvious one, but let's say the electrical system on a home. You may be on an old 2-wire system, and the bank may see that like as a safety issue, and the person who owns the house may put $10,000 into redoing a kitchen, but it doesn't have like the GFCI, and it's not on the new 3-wire system. So And at the end of the day, when it comes to selling the house, the bank may require that to be done, which could be like another $5,000. And if the person hasn't really had an understanding of that going into it, they could sort of be left holding a house that can't qualify to get a loan.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you this. Okay, so is each purchase that you make, do you try to standardize your purchases to reduce the type of homes that you're buying, or do you look at each individual property as its own separate transaction?
Yeah, we look at each property as its own transaction, but we have a system for the type of remodeling we would do on any given house. Like, so, for example, if the house is going to be worth $100,000 once it's fixed, there's certain materials and, quality materials that we put into it compared to a $250,000 house. But what we have learned as well through our experience is that the times when we have gone, we typically like to do standard colors like brown tones and beiges and things like that. And the times that we've veered away from the standards and tried to be a bit more unique is the times when we've probably had a harder time selling the house. And what we've learned is that when you go to something that's unique, it may be very appealing to the 10% of people, but you've just really closed down your buyer's market. So you have to be real careful not to customize it or do things that you really like as opposed to what the general population are going to like.
Yeah, and again, I think this is great advice, because a lot of people just assume that everybody's going to like whatever, I can't think of a good example, but, that everybody's going to like, let's say, shag carpeting, and maybe that's just not the case. The reality is that I think nowadays most people don't even know what shag carpeting is, but, so yeah, you got to keep it very generalized in order to appeal to the masses. Now, let me ask you this. When you are flipping a house, okay, so here's a house that you bought it. Now you want to sell it fast. Walk me through some of the things that you do to sell your homes fast. For example, do you paint it all white, or do you use like different colors in different rooms?
Yeah, I'll walk you through that. So I guess what our standard colors on the inside, it's the paint color is actually called Killam Beige, which is something you can get from Home Depot. And we always do a Killam Beige on the wall for the body. We always do a ceiling white and then a white trim. And it's very simple, but it really gives a nice pop to all of the rooms. And then we'll typically do a flooring, which is in the brown tones as well to go with the beige. So, we may go with a hardwood floor or like a beige color tile, and it really brings all those browns together. And the white trim just gives it that crisp new look, and that's what people really like.
Right, yeah, it gives it a nice little pop. All right, Geremy, so hold on the line a second. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back speaking about the real estate market and flipping homes with Geremy Heath right after this.
Hey, guys, we are back. Today, we're testing out some new equipment, so I apologize if we have any technical difficulties, but we're being joined by Geremy Heath, and we're talking about how to sell your homes fast, whether it's your personal home and maybe you're into the real estate market and you're a flipper, a buyer and a flipper. And so we're talking about how to sell your homes fast. Now, Geremy, let me ask you this. When it comes to mistakes, what are the biggest mistakes you see people make when remodeling a house they intend to sell? I mean, I know we talked about making it too personalized. Is there any other mistakes that you see people make?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest mistake is underestimating the time and effort that it's going to take to remodel a house. Obviously, a lot of people see the TV shows that are out there. To be honest, years ago, that's what got me into remodeling homes. I obviously flipped this house and looked like fun to me. But it's when you're getting into a house, especially one that needs a lot of repairs, you're taking on something that could have a lot of unknowns. And so getting all your ducks in a row up front with, firm bids from contractors and, input from local realtors on pricing and things like that is really going to, save you a lot of heartache down the road to really spend that time up front to know what you're getting in for.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, let me ask you this, because I know, again, you guys are a little bit different because, again, you and Melanie started this years ago, and you guys have a team. If you're just joining us, one of the ways that Geremy and his team reduce costs is that they have a specific system of paints, and all the houses are painted a certain way. Now, let me ask you this, though. When it comes to hiring a contractor or somebody to do this kind of work for you, what tips do you have? What kind of things should I be looking for?
Yes, I think when it comes to contractors, there's two parts to them. One is finding the right one, and then the second one is managing that person effectively. And the decision you make on a contractor, especially if this is the first time you're doing it, it's such an important one. And most people that lose money in the process that are new to it, they lose it because of the poor decision with the contractor. So I guess some of the tips I would have for somebody that's new, firstly, I'd probably get involved in the local real estate group and just speak with other investors that are there to try and get referrals on investor-friendly contractors that are in the area. And I would probably look to get at least 2 to 3 contractors referred to me from reliable sources and interview those guys. And then once it came to an interview process with those contractors, I would definitely want them to produce some references of people that I could call to validate their work. And I would make sure that I walked through some houses that they're working on or that they're finished to see the quality of their work. And if you take that time and go through that process, you have a good chance of picking the right person.
Gotcha. No, and I like that. Let me ask you this, because, again, you have tons of experience. What I have found is that there are a lot of flaky people as far as contractors out there. You know, they show up late. They're sometimes disorganized, and so they finally show up on site, and then they forgot the tool that they need to do whatever. How do you handle flaky contractors? Is it just going through them and finding out that they are flaky and then getting rid of them, or do you have some kind of system to avoid flaky people?
Yeah, I think the two big things I would say on that is the first is if it's somebody that's been referred to you that works for other investors, then there must be a standard they're operating to that is a good one. So that sort of gets them through the first test. But once they start working for you, money is what drives every type of behavior for these guys. So if you need to set up a structure of how the money is paid to them so that they're doing the work before they're getting paid for it, and that you're signing off on the quality of their work before releasing the money. And a lot of the time for people, it can be a little uncomfortable because the contractor may be asking for money and you feel that they don't really deserve it, and because the work isn't up to par, and you have to sort of stick to your guns and know that the release of the money to them is how you're going to get what you want, and you're doing it in a fair way. But as soon as you give them more money than they deserve, that's when they're a good chance of running off. So if you control the money, you can control the workers.
Right. You know what? And I think that this is something that I think is difficult for a lot of people, in the sense that they're trying to avoid that confrontational, awkward situation where you're not happy with the work. And so I like what you're saying there. Hold on to the money. You know, a lot of these contractors are small business operators. I get that. But if you don't control that money and make sure that it's, you know, that it's not, that you're not giving too much of that money up front, then you're going to have a much better time communicating and getting results from that contractor. The worst thing I've seen people do, and I want your take on this, Geremy, is they'll either pay up front for the work, or they pay, you know, they put down too big of a deposit, and because the contractor is a small businessman, you know, sometimes they spend that money to make payroll, and now they don't want to do the work they promised because they no longer have the money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that's the biggest mistake people make is that first payment up front. And we've all heard so many stories. I'm sure we all have a friend that we could probably reference that's been ripped off in some situation where they've given a bunch of money up front and the job hasn't been done. So the simple tips that I would have around that is, and this is what I do, I normally come up with a simple drawer structure of 3 or 4 drawers for the project. And the first drawer is a material drawer. But if I'm working with a guy for the first time, I make sure that I see those materials being purchased with that check that I give them. so that I know that they're not just taking the check and running off. Once they've got those materials, they're then paid based on the completion of the work, and I have this discussion with the contractors up front so that there's no confusion about how it's going to operate.
Right.
And just remember that you're the customer, and so the people, even though for people that are new at this, they may be take charge of how it's structured, but really you have the right to structure it how you want to, and you should do that to get the outcome you're looking for.
Yeah, no, I love that. All right, so Geremy, we're out of time. Always great having you on the show. You're more than welcome to come back, and maybe Melanie can join you next time. Guys, if you have questions about this, check out Geremy and his team at TexasAllCashHomebuyers.com. Geremy, thank you so much for stopping by today.